Increasingly, businesses consider clarity on values as a measure of success or key to success. And so we are here to have a discussion on SCG's value. And with me to do the discussion is George. George is the managing partner of SCG, Chartered Accountant, and he is going to help us understand what the values of SCG are and how the staff live them and how they are important to the success of SCG as a business or as a firm. So, George, you are welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so when we talk about values or SCG values, what are the values that SCG has adopted as a firm?
Well, we've got 5 written values and 2 that are practices. Today, I'll talk about 5 of the values. 3 written and 3 unwritten. These are we seek to do things right, lifelong learning, thinking ahead, taking responsibility, and continuous improvement. These are the values that that we aspire to and try to live within the firm, written and unwritten in the firm, so these are the values. Repeat again: seek to do things right, lifelong learning, think ahead, taking responsibility, continuous improvement.
Okay, great. So let's start with the seeking to do things right. What does it mean? How do you explain that?
I think seeking to do things right is an attitude, it's an aspiration, right? It's a driver, to how you do things, the extent to which you do things. It's a mindset, right? So it means that when you start to do work, you want to do the best you can. Is that right? The best you can. You don't stop, right? Until you start you've done the best you can. What does that do? I think seeking to do things right drives many other things. So if your knowledge is not adequate, for example, you've got to go and address the knowledge. Your process is not adequate, you want to address the process. If there are challenges, or impediments in the way, you want to address the impediments. So that attitude, right, I think drives you to push yourself harder. Is that right? And to identify the things you need to do to do the job well. So it's that idea, it's a standard, right, that you push yourself to try and achieve. And so those who adopt that approach the work differently, they put in the effort, they don't stop until they can, themselves feel I've done the best I can, right? That's the whole idea. I think it pushes you to address different things. You don't aim for low standards, you aim for high standards, right? Doing things right.
Standards. Okay.
Aiming for high standards and doing, that I think is what it means.
Okay. All right. So then let's move to the lifelong learning. How does that also apply?
Well, we're in a knowledge business, right? Learning means that to learn something. To when you learn, you acquire the ability to do something. You understand?
Yeah.
I mean, how do I explain this? Let me just say, I think for me personally, I represent lifelong learning. My career and what I do, it's a reflection of lifelong learning, right? I'm a learner. And so when I confront problems, for example, I go and learn. And so obviously, being in the knowledge business, to develop the skills you need, you want to try and learn. Learn means you're learning how to do it. How do you do it? That kind of stuff. So you must constantly want to learn because there are new things happening, there are new ways of applying ideas, there are new challenges all the time. Is that right? If you're not, and we sell knowledge. So if you're not learning that kind of business, that right, you're going to be irrelevant at some point. So I think for us in SCG, that's what understood the firm that you've got to learn, right? And when I say learn, I mean learn to address the 5 W's and H: why, what, when, where, and how. it's learning for understanding. It's
Yeah.
not reading, for its sake, right? When you learn for understanding and you question it, then you can then apply the concept, and challenge the concept in application. That I think is what it means. It means that, when there's no one pushing you to learn, is that right? You will learn because you want to improve.
Improve,
right?
yeah.
You want to improve all the time, so you will learn. And that's the idea. And I think that is well understood within the firm. The fastest way to leave the firm is not to learn. In the firm, if you're not a learner, you won't survive. As simple as that. Because everyone from partners down to are learners. Everything I've done in the firm, I've done through learning. So yeah, I embody learning. Yeah, lifelong learning.
Sure. So I think that's very important. And so then we move to think ahead, or thinking ahead as a value. I think this is also an important and unique one. Can you explain that?
Well, let me just admit that, the idea of thinking ahead is not a deeply embedded practice yet in the firm. But in the way I lead the firm, in the things I do in the firm, right, thinking ahead is an important attribute, right? What does it mean and why is it important? When you live in a changing world, and this is changing all the time, and therefore you've got a duty, if it would be relevant, to look ahead and ask, how is the world shaping up? What are the forces at play, right? What sort of skills must you develop? And you then must take action, right, to try and take steps towards, addressing, the circumstance you meet in the future. And so without thinking ahead, without scanning the environment, without understanding what is going on, and preparing to meet the challenge, is that right? Then you're going to be irrelevant. I think the COVID hitting us, clearly demonstrate this sort of thing. Those who were unprepared, didn't have the tech tools when COVID hit, right? Hadn't looked ahead, couldn't work. We worked throughout the COVID era, and that's because obviously we looked ahead and we adopted tools to enable us to work, anywhere in the world, essentially, really. It's an example of thinking ahead and taking action. All right. So once we have COVID in mind, it came in handy. All right.
Yeah. So we anticipate and then we prepare for it as it were.
Yeah. And let me add this. Let me add this. My school motto, secondary school motto is dream come. That's fancy, and it means think ahead. So right in secondary school, we've been challenged to think ahead. When I look at my career, my life, and my colleagues, those who thought ahead, right, think of the actions to impact the future. Think about how the world is shaping up, right? And are willing to accept that reality and then do something about it. I think they've come out better overall than those who did nothing, and who lived for the moment. So in a changing world where things are moving very fast, changing very fast, the accounting world is one of those worlds. If you're not anticipating, looking ahead, thinking ahead, working backwards, and trying to take steps, right, to prepare for that future, you've really lost the game, I think, when the time comes.
We've discussed thinking ahead. Now we move to taking responsibility. What does it mean to SCG, or how do you explain that?
I think in a sense it's simple, is that right? If something is to be done, you don't wait to be told. You do something about it. Sure. I think as simple as that. You take action. You don't wait for permission to do it. Is that right? It's necessary to do. You don't wait to be told. You do it. Why is it important? I think it's important in different sort of ways. Let me just give examples. I mean, look, you know what? When I have a discussion with new entrants, I'll tell them nobody owes your career. Nobody owes SCG a business. Nobody owes us a good quality of life individually. Nobody owes us anything, right? We are responsible. It means we take action. You know what I'm saying? So that reflects in different ways. Obviously, at my level in the firm, at a high level, I take action to enhance strategy. So looking ahead and taking action for the future. But it means different things. For example, if you're working on a client assignment, is that right? You must understand the objective of the work, the scope and the deliverables. Right? You must, if your knowledge is not adequate, you must research the knowledge and, and update and apply it. You must follow process. You must communicate clearly. You must ask yourself, the work we've done, is it relevant? Right? You take responsibility. If you're having difficulty, you ask for help. Right? That, I think, is what take responsibility means, in the firm, where a person acts when he must, wait, right, to be told to do it. That's the idea.
And now the final one, the value list, is the continuous improvement. What does that mean to SCG, and how is it linked?
Well, improvement means to make things better, to do things better. Go from one stage to another, to another. Is that right? You start from this stage of quality, you go to a higher level of quality, and so on and so on. That actually is what it means. What that means. If you hear me speaking to people in the firm, asking them to try stuff out, right? You hear me say this often. It's a saying in the firm that you start imperfectly and you improve continuously. What does that mean? It means that you take a first step. You don't have to wait till you know everything ready. You stand. You commit, even if you know it's inadequate. You try to prepare as best as you can, and you commit. But once you do that, you then look for ways to improve. Now, as you take the step, as you begin to work at the issue or try the issue out, right? You get to understand what's working, what's not working, where's the gap, all right? And so in doing that, if you commit to improving, right, you take all of that knowledge. The next time you do it, obviously, you go to a different level. Is that right? And you keep doing that on an ongoing basis. I think that's the idea. That you start from the same position, and based on the experience, the learning, and the doing, you aim for a different level all the time, and continuously, pushing. And I think there are many things we've done in the firm. We've done several things in the firm that have been driven by the idea of you start imperfectly, right, and then you try to improve continuously. So that's the idea. Yeah. Time is too short to give examples of what we've done, how we lived, or to show what we've done, that kind of thinking. But believe you me, we've done stuff in the firm that takes the idea as the underlying premise. Start imperfectly, improve continuously, get better continuously.
The staff are aware of these ones, and how do they live them?
Well, there's a general awareness. We've obviously, when we started discussing the subject of value, one of the first questions that came to mind is, how deeply embedded is this? You understand? We've got new stuff in the firm, so I can't claim it's fully embedded, but every firm is aware of these, of at least the written ones, the do things right, lifelong learning, responsibility. Those are written, is that right? And every member of the firm, is aware of this, basically, and also we assess this as well. But is it deeply embedded? To what extent? I think that's an ongoing question that must interrogate, right? And I think we also interrogate the values. Are they relevant? In what we can make it simplified for people to live it. What's the evidence they're living it? So it's a work in progress, basically. Understand? But we do assess values as per the annual appraisals. So hopefully that begins to drive people as we go along. All right. So to answer the question, there are questions in my mind as to how deeply that's embedded. But the effort would be to continuously evaluate that, simplify ways to simplify, what they represent, and get people to try and live that, get people to live them. So that's my answer. It's a work in progress, but they're aware broadly what they are. Yeah.
Wonderful one. I would have more time in future to have an elaborate values, but for now, thank you for this time. You have shared insightful details with us, and we appreciate that. So we'll see you again some other time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.